We start players without a racket, just going through body balance positions. To give credit where credit's due, I've worked for many great tennis teachers. Welby Van Horn. This is off a pivot. We just did the first step was a square step where they stepped straight out. Then when there was a closed step, they had to adjust their back foot. Front foot's the anchor foot, back foot's the adjustment foot. You have a high center of gravity. That was for the forehand. Now we're doing the forehand volley where there's a power line, they lean forward. Now you want to put yourself in a position, whether it's off a ball machine or with a practice partner tossing you balls, where you can hit, hold, freeze, and self-evaluate. One of the things you're going to evaluate is the body balance position. So they're not bending at the waist. Most players don't bend with their lower body. In actually teaching tennis, we very seldom get around to teaching lower body because we don't really teach tennis. For the most part, what we do is we unteach. People come to us and we have to not add movements but subtract movements. So this is a balanced position for a one-handed underspin backhand. Hand-to-hand forms a line and she's sideways. To stay sideways, you have to get more than sideways. Now, ideally, you're going to do this in front of a full-length mirror. Take a piece of paper, put it where you are typically doing your homework, and then just check it off. And you can go through the 7 different essential strokes that are on your technical tapes and just repeat the movement. Now, the next thing they're going to do is they're going to go through these same movements with a racket. ABC, 1, 2, 3, just grip, swing, and body. This player is just 8 years old. This player is 11 years old. You need to become your own coach. When you miss, you know why you missed. Now they're going through the power line, both serve and overhead. The body's going to be at a 45-degree angle from their toes to their nose. They're leaning in at a 45, but their body segments are also at a 45. After they relax and propel themselves to the net, they open up. So the first movement is the left arm will stay up. The left arm works like a reactive brake. So you decelerate the front side to accelerate the right. Now we're going through the stance for the deuce court and for the ad court. The back foot's the same, the front foot's the same at a 45-degree angle. The back foot, you change between deuce court and ad court. Most players have a stance where they have a false sense of body rotation. They stand with their back foot too far behind them. Now, we're going to start forward and then go back. So you weights forward, back. You learn to rotate your knees, rotate your hips, rotate your shoulders. All right, now, I don't know who this old guy is right here, but he's showing them how to do it. Now the ready position. Be brilliant with basics. Very few people have the ready position. You've heard so many things this week. Keep in mind that it's basic shots that win a match. The great shots make the highlight reel. The ready position is your forehand volley. The ready position is the backswing for your forehand ground stroke. It just comes down to efficiency. Now our critics will say, gee, you're teaching everyone the same. The strength of the individual always comes out. There will always be individuality. People talk about style. You've seen high-speed film of pros. She's going to keep her wrist fixed, relax her swing from her elbow. Then when she backtracks, it takes the racket out to the target. That's called your hitting zone. The hitting zone is about 18 inches in length or a time span of 75 milliseconds. The racket's up, the body's up, they go down together. It's a three-point landing. As they turn, and she's in balance, trying to push her over. So the racket goes down, the body goes down as the foot goes out. You have to get organized. You split step. You organize yourself with a forehand grip where you're in the ready position. I'm just doing a voiceover with this tape because the acoustics, the sound will be better. Her elbows raised. The racket head is an extension of the palm. So goes the palm, so goes the racket. And they freeze and they evaluate. They check the checkpoints. They process. We don't use the KISS method. The KISS method is keep it simple, stupid. I've been trained not to underestimate the capacity of the learner. We call the volley a pushing motion. When the ball is below the level net, the racket face opens up less than 10 degrees. Now, young players, you saw that film of young Pete Sampras. You have a better chance of developing a one-handed backhand volley by hitting two-handed. Now, many people think they're hitting one-handed, but when we show high-speed film, they're using their left hand as a crutch. You use the left index finger on the racket face to have better racket head awareness, racket head maneuverability. You want to keep your left elbow up. It's like an archer pulling a string off a bow. And you're going to stay sideways. Now your knuckles go towards the target. People are often asking, is there time to change their grip? Well, if there's time to turn your shoulders, if there's time to take a step, you have to go from a bent position to a straight position when you hit a volley. So if you train yourself, you can change grips. What you want to do is make sure that you center yourself. All right, now from here, you can see on the backhand, the arm is straight. Farther. And she's going to have her upper body turned. You get more than sideways to stay sideways. For topspin, for efficiency, the racket's going to go in two directions. It's going to go high, low, high, and inside out. So they have the racket up high. It was high in the ready position. They're going to have clean swings because the racket was at a 45-degree angle in the ready position. They leave it alone, they turn, it's at a 45-degree angle here. You can see the angle of the racket head. You saw Agassi. I always tell people, if you find Agassi not in this position on a backhand, I'll buy you lunch. And he's there every time. He doesn't let the racket go to the right. He relaxes his swing from his shoulders. Now, it requires discipline for these players to actually just go through this over and over again. It's not the will to win, it's the will to prepare. Now, every day when we start practice, we have kids drop hit balls. Okay? They start drop hitting some forehands on balance, some backhands, underspin backhands. All right, now the overhead. It's not a rule that you have to use your left hand, but the left hand helps you abbreviate the swing, change the grip, relax the muscles in your right arm. It helps you set the racket in the most efficient angle. In a throwing motion, and that's what we call the serve in the overhead, when the shoulder goes forward, the opposite equal reaction is the elbow goes between, I should say the racket goes between your elbow and your head. We call it the power X. It's going to end up with the right arm over the left arm. Now this is the service motion. The overhead is just an abbreviated serve. I'm going to start forward and turn. Now you arc the ball forward this way. We call it a letter J. You take your tossing hand, your left hand, no further back than your belly button. Notice how I'm showing her how the arm goes. She doesn't toss with her wrist or her elbow. She tosses from her shoulder. When she turns, both players, you'll see how their left arm on the initial turn, mine in demonstrating, is parallel to the baseline. You cannot be too cool for school. Right? And again, you don't need to do this during your time with a pro. You don't need to do this with your time in a private lesson. On court, off court. www, on court, off court. You can order the 12-inch, the 18-inch cone, get some Nerf balls. You can do this in a TV room. Notice they stand a good distance from the cone. Shadow swinging is more abstract. Hitting off a cone is more concrete. So where is the contact point? The mother of skill is repetition. You just have to repeat, repeat, repeat. Once you understand what to do, there's a great expression. Don't think, do. Don't think, do. So many times someone comes to me, they're a young tennis player, and they think they're in a position of judgment. Initially, okay, I'm going to judge whether the coach is knowledgeable or not. But once I accept the coach has knowledge, it's not a matter of judgment, it's not a matter of thinking, it's a matter of doing. And it's the million time club. 2 million time clubs, you've heard that. You're going to either do it a million times or you're going to be told a million times. There's only one club to be in. Now, you won't find this word in the English language, a dictionary. Coachability. How coachable are you? Now, a practice partner. Again, use your imagination. Imagination is greater than knowledge. Do you need a tennis court to do this?
No.
You can just go right out in your driveway. And this is a skill. Winning's a byproduct of skill. She should be able to put it right back in her hand every time. Her hand becomes a target. Remember the definition of tennis. Tennis is running and hitting targets with a score. Now she's doing great, but I would be critical saying, all right, no, every time go back to the ready position. Every time start with your arm bent. So again, that word, every time she's changing her arm. All right, now use a bench. So it's going to be like I sit in the chair. Remember the three-point landing. Very few players use their lower body. People find shortcuts. They'll just let the racket go down by dropping the racket head below the wrist. But she's going to come up. She's going to demonstrate a forehand. It's going to just be one knee bending, the back knee, as she steps out. Steps out with a bent knee. And she's going to lift. You'll hear many myths in tennis to stay down. You stay down with your eyes and your head, but when you're hitting topspin, you lift. All you have to do is watch the pros. They lift so much they're off the ground. In lifting, topspin is a downward motion. It's created with an upward motion of the body and racket. Now, it's a great time in tennis to talk about basics because of the two number ones, Roger Federer, Justine Henin. All you have to do is watch them play, and you can see the theme, be brilliant with basics. The ball doesn't know where it's being hit by a forehand or backhand, so the principles are the same. Really, the two-handed backhand is just a left-handed forehand. Now, during this week, you've seen many pre- and post films of players we filmed on the first day, and then we came back, whether it was a week later or a year later. And you saw pre- and post films of players that have won at every level. So what she needs to do is go through these static balance exercises. Static balance means stationary. There's no movement. All right, now there's many exercises to do against the wall. Okay, the fence is to us a wall, but you can do this at home. Now remember I showed you the tape of the 19-year-old that had very poor technique, but he ended up playing all the Grand Slams, and he didn't start playing pro tennis till he was almost 25 years old. But you could do this with a drop hit, and you could do it for 45 minutes. It's just how badly do you want to improve? Her backswing's not going to hit the fence on this side, and it's not going to hit the fence on this side. So the best type of motivation is self-motivation. And what you want to do is you want to become an independent thinker. So if you're going to become an independent thinker, you should be able to practice independently. These are also solo exercises. You don't need a partner. Now, I was asking you today, do you wake yourself up? There's a close connection between getting up in the morning and getting up in the world. Just set your alarm 15 minutes earlier, 30 minutes earlier. Go to bed earlier. Try to manage your downtime better. People waste so much time. When it comes down to philosophy, we have met the enemy, and the enemy is us. Everybody can be a great player. They just need great fundamentals, and then the three secrets of tennis. What this tape is about is practice, practice, practice. Okay, the underspin backhand. We don't call it the slice. Most people have a grip where the racket face is way open. And go back and look at your technical tapes where the rackets have a tendency to pull east and west and not go north and south. Now typically what happens, these two young tennis players, that people are asking, okay, who's that? How good are they? What's their ranking? It doesn't take a lot of imagination to just look and go, these girls can play. Why can they play? Because they can hit the ball. But the way we teach tennis is a slower process. We're going to teach people to play singles. We're going to teach people to play doubles. We're going to teach people to play all over the tennis court. It takes about 10,000 hours to be a tennis player. That's 3 hours a day, 1,000 hours a year for 10 years. Arthur Ashe said it very well. You can be a fair player in 3 years. You can be a good player in 5. You can be a great player in 10 years. I have never seen a great 12 and under player. I've seen players that are great for 12 years of age, but a 12-year-old is not a great player. Okay, they haven't put the 10,000 hours in. They can be very, very good, but they have not reached their max. Worked with a lot of different tennis teachers. I think of sports psychologist Jim Lair, Dr. James Lair. Tennis players never arrive. They're always in transit to a better place. So now you can see they're tracing the swing. Somewhere in your house, you could draw a big letter C against a wall, maybe in a basement or garage, and you just trace the swing. Remember that winners are willing to do what non-winners are not willing to do. It's like the kid who can really shoot a basketball. You just know that they spent endless hours in the driveway by themselves shooting basketballs. Same thing with someone who can really play the piano. They have just spent the time. And tennis is no different. Now here you can have someone toss you a ball. The racket should not hit the wall on either side. And what you're really looking for, once again, is the racket head. Today you're on the tennis court, we talked about racket head awareness. Are you aware of what you're doing with your racket head? Now, both these players can teach tennis. Teaching is information transfer. The highest form of retention for learning is to teach. Now, since you've both been here to visit, we've had you teach. You should be able to teach the grip, you should be able to teach the swing, and you should be able to teach the body balance position. Okay, every day. Every day. If you have palm up, if you have a real high toss, you're not going to be able to swing the sock. The sock is a baseball trick. So with the palm down, you can have your elbow up, and you can have a continuous motion. Put this on your checklist. In other words, I'm going to swing the sock 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, and don't have to put a zero. But what happens is do it right. No one's saying you have to practice a long period of time, but when you do these at-home exercises, do them slowly, do them properly, do them with quality. Now, you know since you've been here, we've had you serve with a sock, with a tennis ball. If you keep your head still, if you have that power line, you can serve with a sock. Most players toss too high. The riddle, does the racket find the toss or does the toss find the racket? Program the swing and then toss to the swing. Okay, new day. It's a new opportunity to excel. We've gone from May 25th to May 26th. I'm going to keep my knees, my hips, my shoulders in sync. And when it's very interesting, if you hit the ball well, how the body and racket complement one another. It's uncanny how they just make the same movement. Excuse me, she starts forward, she goes back, she has her arms on the inside, relaxed. Just like a baseball player taking the ball out of a glove. You keep your eyes at the hit. The brain is a fifth of a second ahead of the hand, so players sneak a peek. So when the eyes go, what happens? The head goes. Inch for inch, the head's the heaviest part of the body, and now the racket will go the way the body goes. The body is the leader. So the eyes go, the head goes, the whole trunk, the largest body part spins open. Very few players stay in a position that will allow them to be successful on the serve. Another thing that's very important is power and control are interchangeable. You heard this week and you were asked to write it down. To hear it's to forget it. To write it down is to remember it. To do it over and over again is to understand it. If you try to hit the ball hard, you won't hit the ball right. But if you try to hit the ball right, you'll be able to hit the ball hard. People have it backwards. The ball weighs 2 ounces. People go to a backboard. 15 minutes on a backboard is equivalent to an hour of balls hit. Players typically try to take a 2-ounce ball and knock the backboard over. It's not going to happen. Now there's just progressive exercises. You can do this inside. You could roll up 2 balls of socks. You're going to turn, toss, and throw. You rotate. You bend that throwing arm. She's just trying to hit the ball with the ball. She's tossing one and hitting it with the other. The number one reason that you want to change strokes, you heard that earlier, is the prevention of injury. Young players are very supple. They can make all sorts of inefficient movements by tossing the ball over their head, but they won't really find out till later in life that the way they're serving will create problems with tendinitis. Your players can have problems with their elbow, their shoulder, their back. Now they're actually just throwing a ball. Now there is no perfection, there's just excellence. It comes down to it, most players toss the ball too low. The best servers in the history of the game, if they're right-handed, low tosses out to the right, left-handed, low tosses out to the left. Now, we're going to have them serve on balance, but they should get to the point where they can serve and go forward. When you actually do play, even if you're going to serve and stay back, you would serve and go forward by a minimum of 2 steps. Now, some players we have are great servers. The great servers can take that sock and throw it almost the length of 2 tennis courts. That's 240 feet. That's 80 yards. The number one power source on the serve, as you know, we call it the cobra position. You're going to hypersupinate. But typically, most players turn their palm up because it's a logical, intelligent movement. Because the tennis court creates optical problems and they see their target straight ahead through the net. But when you hit really any shot, but think of the serve, you're going to be blind to your target. And with a continental grip, you do not swing towards your target. You swing away from your target. As a right-hander, you're going to swing left to right, but the strings still end up facing your target. Just about everybody starts out with a palm up, and then it's interesting, I would say approximately 8 out of 10 players have some version of palm up in their serve. Famous story about Andy Roddick when he was a kid. His mother's on an ESPN tape saying that his serve, the word was pitiful. That's the word she used. And then he said he experimented on his own and he put his palm downward. Now we call it the Andy Roddick position. We used to call it the John Elway position. A football player could throw the ball 100 yards. All right, now this is a drill you tried in practice and you did quite well. But you don't want to be satisfied. The tennis players, it's just like anything else. A couple years ago, the famous football player Peyton Manning, he won the Super Bowl, and when they won, it was on a rainy, rainy day. But what he does every day is, as the quarterback, he has the center hike a ball to him. But the ball is dunked in a water jug before he takes the snap. So every day he practices taking a snap with a wet football. That's why he's a Super Bowl champion. That's why he's Peyton Manning. But at every level, it just comes down to the basics. So if he is the best or one of the best quarterbacks in the world, what's he doing? He's practicing the same thing today that he was practicing when he was in elementary school. People don't understand that in tennis. Golfers understand their sport more than tennis players. Tennis players are always asking, who's in my group? What kind of workout did I get? Golfers understand strokes because of the scoring system. Tennis players don't really understand strokes overall. Now this we call a third base drill. They're just putting the racket on the court, lifting their arm, and putting themselves in a position that you would see people throwing a baseball, like all the way from third base to first base. Now we've done this drill since you've been here. She's going to run forward. The reason she's going to do that, that's going to give her a toss that's out in front, and she's going to have a low toss. And you can see she tosses too high, plus she didn't do the drill. run first. Run first, so I told her to do that. Now she's going to improve. She lifts her head up too soon. She faces forward. Very few people get the last link. When you hit a ball, your body is a kinetic chain. It's a linkage system. You have the interaction of body segments. You're going to decelerate one to accelerate the rest. Okay, now what worked for the serve is going to work for the forehand. Okay, repetition. She's trying to hit the ball in the alley. When we have people drop hit in the alley, they have to understand the dimensions of the court. Something that should be in your journal. This is how we get tennis coaches to work together. The dimensions of the court and physical laws dictate stroke production. Again, the dimensions of the court and physical laws dictate stroke production. No coach's opinion or any unique theory. The tennis court's less than 20 degrees wide. This morning we did alley drills. We did a number of drills in the alley. And if you can keep the ball in a confined space, you can improve tremendously. Keep in mind the tennis court from the baseline is less than 20 degrees wide. From the service line, it's less than 30 degrees. Now, you can see these players are going hand to hand on the follow-through. Many times, what people will do is they'll criticize what we do and say, well, it's old school. Old school, new school, there is no school. In America, you become a certified pro in a weekend. Now, when it comes down to different stages of development, I think tennis players need to have some humility. And when you're 8 years old or 11 years old, you're not always looking at the very top and say, okay, let's look at what the touring pros are doing. You've seen film this week of what touring pros did when they were really young. Now we go into just a little bit of movement. So we go from static balance to dynamic balance. So coming back to the last point, is many tennis players mistake what the pros do in a recovery stage as the follow-through. Because when you watch high-level players play, you better have some high-speed film if you're going to analyze what they do. Now, they're not using shuffle steps. When you take a shuffle step, and it's not against the rules, and there's times where you actually do shuffle step, but when you take a shuffle step, you take one step and you're in the same movement. I should say, the same position. Now, ideally, what she's going to do is she's going to step back to the center, and then she's going to cross over. For years, I had the opportunity to watch Steffi Graf practice. She was so fast, but she used crossover steps. She took half the steps to cover twice the distance. When you use a shuffle step, you take that first step, and you're in the same spot. And again, you don't need to be on a tennis court doing this. You could go right out in the driveway, right on the sidewalk. One of the reasons that people don't use a backboard is they can't pull themselves away from the people hanging out in the lobby. Okay? We call that downtime. Be positive, be friendly, say hello to everybody, and then just go to work. Boris Becker said it quite well. If you want abnormal results, you can't do what's normal. If you want to be better than other players, you can't do what they're doing. We just talked about Program Plus. These are the type of things that you can do on your own. Now, when she's drop hitting that two-handed backhand, we prefer the player to turn with her left hand on the racket. Again, why you want that tracking motion is that you can play the ball here, here, here. Someone hits the ball fast, you can play it. Someone hits the ball slow, you can play it. Many times, parents have heard this for sure. Many times a kid will say, I don't like playing against them. They're a pusher. Many times players have horizontal swings and they can't play against someone who hits the ball soft and short or a combination of soft and short. The reason they can't hit against someone who hits the ball slowly is they don't have good enough skills. The other thing too is that I never let kids use the word pusher in a derogatory sense. Bjorn Borg, you could say that he was a pusher. Another way to say that is a defensive specialist. What a defensive specialist is doing is trying to see if you can beat yourself. Because if you have a combination of defense and offense, you can beat the defensive specialist. All right, now the one-handed backhand. Path of the racket, path of the target. Now there's 300 balls approximately in a ball basket like this. Is someone willing to go out on their own and drop hit 300 balls? Pick them up and then do it again. Just to ask yourself, how many times do you go to a tennis club and you actually see someone on their own practicing? I mean, someone should be able to perfect the serve by just going out and practicing. She's shadow swinging, she's repeating the movement. Vic Bradenism, I've learned so much from Vic. To me, Vic is the most knowledgeable tennis teacher that I've had the opportunity to be around. But interesting, he's done the most research, done the most homework. Now we're just having her hit forehands. Now we're working on movement. And when you play, you have to hit on one bounce. But right now, a young player like this, hitting the ball on 2 bounces. We use a transition ball, a couple different types of slower balls. Because what changes from one level of play to the next is the speed of the ball. Typical of every girl, or I correct myself, almost every girl at her age has a contact point above the shoulder, and they have an extreme grip that will force them to be a one-dimensional player. But to me, this looks like tennis. It looks like she has a great foundation. You know, when you build a house and you have to start with a foundation, and with a foundation, you go down before you go up. So it's all a building process. We want her to breathe out when she hits the ball. Now with this swing, she can truly hit topspin. Very few people hit true topspin, because very few people get the racket head below the ball. Now, people would watch her hit the ball like this and they'd be envious. They would love to hit the ball the way she does. But are they willing to put the work in? Now, in a minute, what we're going to do is we're going to feed balls just the opposite. We're going to feed the ball extremely high. I'm always asking tennis players, what bounces higher, topspin or underspin? Actually, the answer, players will say topspin, but the answer is underspin. What makes a ball bounce higher? There's 3 physical characteristics that we deal with. I mean, there's certainly sound, but speed, spin, trajectory. Trajectory is what makes the ball bounce high. So in a minute, you'll see that she's going to hit with a high trajectory. That racket just ends up in a clean position. The follow through is a product of the backswing. Now she could turn more, she could have her arm more on the inside. Okay, so a little technical difficulty now. Watch. The ball is being fed very high, feeding it with extreme topspin. And she's trying to play the ball on the rise. Okay, what happens so often is kids back up. And granted, sometimes you have to step back for a manageable contact point. But most kids are going back all the way to the fence. On a conventional court, from the baseline to the fence is 21 feet. If you have 20 degrees of potential angle from the baseline and you move back, that angle decreases. Greater chance of missing, greater chance of hitting short, you give your opponent more time. But you need to practice. Now, one thing that doesn't take place very often is having a practice partner. You feed me 10, I'll feed you 10. Okay. Typically what happens is the pro ends up doing all the feeding. Now she's hitting a two-handed forehand. Federer started with a two-handed forehand when he was a little kid. Nadal hit a two-handed forehand until he was almost 12 years old. It's a great corrective measure for shortening the swing. But what happens is the young player says, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm advanced. I'm too good to do that drill. Why am I doing this? Okay, her swing goes behind her. We want her to hit some two-handed forehands. Remember what you heard from the movie Hoosiers. Practice is not designed for your pleasure. It's designed for your improvement. It's just the opposite. Wayne Bryan, the father of the great tennis players, the Bryan brothers, he's always saying, do just the opposite. The opposite rule. Do just the opposite and you will become great. well, I'd like to sit in the lobby and just talk to my friends and get a cool drink out of the vending machine. No, I'm going to go out, I'm going to hit the backboard. I'm going to go out, I'm going to hit some serves. I'm going to go out, I'm going to shadow swing. I'm going to go out, I'm going to swing the sock. Backboards are usually built too low. We're fortunate in this setting we have a really high backboard. I drive, years ago you don't see it so much, but in the 70s you drive through the neighborhood, you see some kid hitting a ball against a garage door. I kind of cringe a little bit because they're practicing a horizontal swing, but at least they're practicing. Typically what they're doing is they're developing skill, but they're not developing form and skill. This is a foam ball, and she can get to the point where she's taking full swings with a foam ball. She should hit that two-handed. She just has to adjust. Now perhaps I'm telling her just to isolate and hit 20 forehands. You can find a backboard. Great place to find a backboard is behind a grocery store, behind a school. You can find a backboard. Now she's just practicing side to side now. Jimmy Connors didn't grow up as a wealthy kid, famous tennis story, and all he could do in the winter was hit against the backboard. And he ended up developing having such short, compact swings, and arguably one of the best return serves in the history of the game. I don't think I've ever seen anyone who had a system where they could steal aces better than Jimmy Connors. Now he hit against a wall, the ball would skid off a wooden floor, and he developed very short, compact swings. Again, ratio of balls hit. Chrissy Everett's father says, generally the person who hits the most balls becomes the best player. Well, if you agree with that, start hitting the backboard. Now they're going to be doing many different exercises against the backboard, but coming back to the definition of tennis, running and hitting targets with a score, give yourself a target on the backboard. She's backing up a little bit. Now we're just telling her to try to hit the ball harder. You know, when you watch a pro, they could be at Wimbledon, and they warm up, they have to drop hit the ball. Becker won Wimbledon at 17. Most people didn't notice, but every time he would start a rally, he would drop hit a backhand. Because someone told him when he was younger that you need to improve your backhand. So every time he started a rally, he would drop hit the ball with a backhand. Now you can go with a friend and hit against the backboard. They hit one, hold or finish, you hit one. But I see young kids many times, it's just, again, a slugfest. Who can hit the ball the hardest? You could go someplace and actually take music with you and hit against the backboard. Say, okay, for this entire song, I'm just going to hit forehands. The next song, I'm going to just hit backhands. You'll find some kids putting on the iPods. You used to call them the Walkmans. I think many times when people go to a backboard, they're not structured. They're not organized. When kids go to a weight room or athletes go to a weight room, they generally have, okay, I'm going to do 10 exercises, 10 reps, 3 sets. And they repeat it. They can go in and they get that weight workout done in a hurry. When you go to the backboard, you can do the same thing. I've got 10 exercises. I'm going to do 10 reps per exercise, and I'm going to do 3 sets. But if you go out there without a plan and you're just haphazardly hitting the backboard, it most likely will not be as productive. The backboard's a great way to practice specialty shots too. In other words, in a minute they're going to be trying to hit overheads. When you hit down on the floor of the court and the ball goes up, that's a great way to practice, say, for example, the shot that everybody wants to hit, especially the boys, the tweener. If you read autobiographies of pros, Bjorn Borg, a famous story, he eventually beat Rod Laver, but he had already beat him against the backboard. I grew up playing ice hockey. I love ice hockey. When you hear people who have won the Stanley Cup, they generally say, I won it when I was playing street hockey as a kid, because they dream. Accomplishing your dreams is a nightmare of work. Say that again. Accomplishing your dreams is a nightmare of work. It's very easy to say, oh, I want to be a great player. But prove it, and prove it through practice. Prove it through practice. Now right here, over and over again, you have to hit the ball out in front to do this. And once you can do one skill, you can do another skill. You're going to have to retrieve. So I can hit the ball up over my head, I go back, and then I could practice the over-the-shoulder shot. I could practice retrieving where you have to be wristy. Okay? I think of someone like Tiger Woods. He goes out and he practices. I love to say this about Tiger Woods. He's a guy with a work ethic that when he checks out of a hotel, he cleans the room. But he has to make 100 3-foot consecutive putts before practice ends. But what he does is he says, okay, what type of shots am I going to have to hit? And he practices those. If you read about Roger Federer, when he was younger coming up in tennis, he said, okay, I've got to decide, I've got to learn, I've got to know what type of shots I'm going to hit, and then I'm going to practice those shots. You should be able to hit serves where the ball just comes right back to you. If you don't have that much time, because if you hit a basket of serves, you have to pick them up. You can go to the backboard with one ball, work on your serve, ball just comes right back to you. So again, this is just another way to talk about time management. You can create games against the backboard. She's trying to rally a few balls, play an approach shot, and then come to the net. She's going to do the same thing. Right? She's going to try to play a game. Let's see what she does. Okay, she's going to serve. She's going to rally a few balls. Let's see if she can create an approach shot. It's another ground stroke. Should have got there hit two-handed. And then come in and play an approach shot. And then she's going to try to play a volley. Think of it as banking hours. If a young kid has a piggy bank and they start putting pennies in their piggy bank, the pennies turn into nickels, and nickels turn into dimes, dimes turns into quarters, and so forth, so forth. Practice is an investment of time. You have to put the time in. Do you know, housing tennis players, and I've housed tennis players for years, typically what most tennis players do is they only practice when the pros tell them to practice, and then they come home and they spend more time on the internet reading about who beat who. The computer is really a thief of time. Now, when people come to us the first day, we film, you know that, we film their strokes, we film them playing, but we put them through skills tests. We have them hit 25 shots at designated targets. Then say if they make 10, we multiply by 4, they get 40%. Now, we put strategy to this, running, hitting targets with a score. She's going to come up, green zone. She's going to be in GVP. She's going to play the approach shot, up the percentage line. She's 2 for 2. You can keep score. Are you 0 for 2, 1 for 2, 2 for 2? And if you make the shot, ready position, she runs first. You can play it like a volley with an added follow through. You can play top spin. You never want to limit one skill. Very few people can play an approach volley. So you're playing against the person who hits the ball up high, the so-called moonballer, take the ball out of the air. She's going to go cross court from the red zone, neutral area, inside the percentage post, percentage line, and closes in. Get people to do the drill without the ball. The tiebreaker test, you have to make 6 shots. A cross-court forehand, a cross-court backhand, an approach shot, cross-court volley, downline volley, overhead anywhere. You have to make 42 shots to win. You have to miss 7 shots to lose. So, it's a 6-to-1 winner-to-error ratio. The feeder's not making unforced errors. I'm often asked, how do you develop programs? How do you develop pros? How do you develop players? And my answer is the tiebreaker test. From that tiebreaker test, we're going to teach strokes, we're going to teach strategy, we're going to teach movement, we're going to teach footwork, We're going to teach breathing. We're going to teach mental toughness. But they have to be able to execute. They have to make the shot. Now what happens is people come and visit our tennis school, and then they come back, and I said, have you done the tiebreaker test since you've left? And they say no. So they didn't get it. Okay? The way we teach tennis, we strongly feel that we teach people to take the information, to take the program home with them. The ball is below the level net, you're going to hold the percentage line. Okay, she's playing a forcey shot, she stopped, which is fine. There's no right or wrong. Okay, she recovers. It's in, split step. And you can just tell by their skills that these girls can play doubles. We don't allow for a minute for someone to serve and stay back. In our practices, you serve and stay back, you don't serve again. You go home. If someone plays high school tennis as a freshman, they play one up, one back because they want to win. What are they going to do as a sophomore? They're going to play one up, one back. The future's now. There's no such thing as little strokes for little folks. And what happens is if you program yourself, remember, it's not muscle memory. There's no such thing. It's brain memory. So if you program yourself to be a one up, one back doubles player, you are a one up, one back doubles player. Okay, now as you see how she's moving through the shot, closes in. Now that ball is a little bit low. She could hit that ball back down the line. Different awarenesses. You want to have self-awareness. You want to have ball awareness, racket awareness. You're aware of the score. You're certainly going to be aware of yourself and your opponent. You want to also be aware of the elements. So go back, rewind what I just said. I just said the different types of awarenesses. I listed 7 of those. I mean this and these 2 young players that helped us out so much. We didn't have them in the position where the camera and the sun were working very well together. But we often ask players to look at a camera. We like to have players be in front of other players and speak so they can develop presence. They can develop confidence. A definition for confidence, let's end with that. Confidence is the absence of uncertainty. Reiner Martins. Confidence is the absence of uncertainty. Confidence is repetition. Confidence is knowing you can do it. Confidence is rehearsal. Confidence is practice. Confidence is born from practice. If sometime you're not practicing, somewhere, someone is practicing, and when you meet that player, you will lose. Okay? You have to practice. Just have that sense of urgency. Hey, if I'm not practicing, someone else is. And when I meet that person, they will win. Just have that sense of urgency. I must practice. And also, too, is that you find the skills through other challenges as well. Improve in the classroom. If you have focus in the classroom, you can have focus on the tennis court. I can go on forever. Here's one last thing, I promise, the bonus one. Be mature beyond your years. Be mature beyond your years. It takes maturity to practice, and practice efficiently, productively. Thank you for listening. This epic is over.